Okay, so we have a slightly controversial video today. I'm going to be talking about at least what I believe are the problem with traditional tactics. And the reason I feel compelled to make this video is that if you've been playing chess for any amount of time, you've probably heard the advice of, you just need to do tactics. And before we go any further, I want to clarify, I'm not really saying don't do tactics. In fact, I really truly believe that tactical ability is the core of the core foundation of your chess strength. My belief though is that just doing the normal tactical puzzles you get on most chess sites is not the best way to actually maximize that strength. Before we get into that though, I just want to clarify that there are two common issues that a lot of players have when they do tactics, and are honestly reasons why they're probably not getting the results from them that they could be. And it's that they do tactics, but they're just not consistent. They do it like once a year on their birthday or on Christmas or something to treat themselves. I don't know. Or they might be consistent, but they're like, the way they do tactics bad. They're like, half guessing the solutions, they're moving the pieces around while they're doing it, they're not focusing while they're solving the tactics, they're watching a Gotham chess video in the background. So it's like, yeah, if you're doing those things while you're trying to solve tactics, you're probably gonna not be having the best results. But provided we have those things handled, this brings me to what I actually want to talk about in this video, which is this phenomenon of what I would call puzzle mode. And it's this idea that whenever you solve a position, like on a regular tactics trainer on chess.com, WeChess, Chess Tempo, wherever, there's a solution. Like you don't go onto a tactics puzzle and then they're like, oh, joke's on you, there's no solution, right? Like you're probably going to get pissed and you're probably going to like quit the website or something. But the problem with this is that compared to real games, there are often positions you have in real games where you feel like there might be a tactic here, but there's actually not, right? There's many positions where like tactics just do not work no matter how hard you try to make them work. But the problem is there's this contrast, right, between if you're doing a lot of tactics, you kind of get used to the idea that, oh, there's a tactic here, but then when you play a real game, you have all these positions where there's no longer all these tactics that work. And what this results in, for many players at least, not everyone, but for a lot of players, is they kind of adapt their playing style to this sort of way of playing where they're always trying to force something onto the position. They're always trying to like make some tactic work, and sometimes it pays off, but a lot of the times it doesn't. And again, for a lot of players, what this means is they end up sort of stuck in this sort of puzzle mode way of playing where they're always treating the like position in front of them as if it's a puzzle. I've even heard some people say on like YouTube, for example, you should treat every position in front of you as if it's a puzzle. I think that's pretty bad advice, to be honest, but that's just me. But to give an example of what I mean when I talk about puzzle mode, here is a game that was taken from one of my students' recent classical games. I think it was about a month ago. My student, he's about 1600 USDF now. His opponent was about 1700. And in this position, his opponent spent black. My student was white. His opponent spent about 30 minutes. 30 minutes, right? That's a long time. It's like move 10. They're still in the opening. Barely anything's happened. And he ended up playing this move. Knight takes d4. Knight takes d4. It's crazy, right? And he spent 30 minutes on that. So he was thinking for a long time. This wasn't just something he was like playing a blitz game. It's like, oh, let's try knight takes d4. He was clearly thinking for a long time about this and ended up going for it. But his idea was like e3 and maybe like if takes that he would, I don't know, get bishop g4 or knight g4 or something. And some of this looks slightly scary, but in reality just doesn't really get anywhere. For example, let's say knight f3, queen f2, king f1, takes. Really, after all is said and done, like maybe you have an extra check somewhere, but it's not going to do a whole lot. I think the king can just come back, the queen's under attack, and you're really just down material in this position for not enough compensation. Not to mention, I'd say actually white's development is also better. Black only really has two pieces in the game. This is probably going to backfire quite quickly. And that was kind of like the best case scenario, right? In the game, my student just played knight f3, he didn't even take it, letting the queen get in so easily. Takes happened, and yeah, okay, he gave a knight check, but it didn't really do much, and there were some complications, I guess, that kind of happened, but more or less, I'd say my student won a pretty clean game from this point onwards, where he was really just a piece up for not enough compensation. Again, black only had a pawn. He's not even ahead in development, so again, like, okay, maybe the king is slightly misplaced not being able to castle, but it's a problem that can be fixed. So coming back to the Google Sides deck, some of you might be thinking like, okay, that's great, I sort of get what you're on about here, but what do I actually do? Right before we discuss that though, quick ad, shameless plug, here's my newsletter, I'd suggest subscribing to it. I actually discussed this particular topic in it like about 3 months ago. I just didn't upload the video for it yet. So if you're interested in these sorts of topics and more, I'd suggest you go subscribe there. But anyways, right back on topic. So the first potential solution I want to discuss is, and I have two of these actually. The first one though is going to be what I'd call simulations. And okay, sorry, I had to adjust my head, it was blocking the text there. I have to sacrifice myself for the greater good. But basically simulations, or it can be called a bunch of things. Some people call it like solitaire chess, some people call it, I like to call it guess the move sometimes. Basically where you just pick a game, whatever game you want, and you just try to guess the moves of it for a particular player. And at first sight, you might be like thinking like, well, why is that so good? But here are the benefits of it. So if you think about like an attacking player like Tung or Morphy, Kasparov, whoever you want really, the benefits you'll get from guessing the moves of their game are that you're not just seeing the one moment where they have like this amazing tactic and oh my god, they're winning now. You get to see how from the very start of the game they gradually build up the attack until the point where they actually have the tactic. And this gives you a better intuition for like, oh, this tactic is the result of this eventual build-up. It's not just this random thing that happened out of thin air. There's usually a process to where eventually like, oh, you get a good position and then you go for the tactic, and again to see how that build-up actually looks, in my opinion, is just as valuable as actually being able to see the tactic itself. There's a famous quote actually by a player, I forget who it was, but he was basically talking about another top player of the time, and he's like, I can see all the combinations they can, all the tactics that they are able to see, I'm just not able to get the same positions they do. So that kind of illustrates the point there. I guess the downside, if there is one, of simulations is that it just takes a bit more time to do. So like there's kind of a bit of a balance. Like I'm not saying just do simulations, don't do any tactics. It's like you'd want to do probably a bit of tactics and then like maybe you mix in a simulation here and there of like an attacking player, for example. And it doesn't have to be of an attacking player, by the way. I think simulations are good for every aspect of the game. If you want to study like a positional player, like Karpov, that could be really good. But in particular, the concept in the, sorry, not the concept, in the context of, you know, wanting to improve your tactical ability, studying an attacking player probably makes the most sense. Okay, so the second potential solution are what I'd like to call anti-blunder puzzles. And I have actually an image of one that I read, which is for very advanced players like 2200 plus FIDE. I read this in 2023. It's called Recognizing Your Opponent's Resources by Mark Dvoretsky. Huge inspiration for a lot of the positions that I've gathered on my own and that I use for my own students. But basically these sort of positions, you will not find the most typical chess sites like chess.com, Lichess in the puzzle section. I mean, I don't think most players would react well if they were solving a puzzle and then it was like, oh, joke's on you, like there's actually no solution, which is how basically a lot of these are. It's like the idea is not just to see your idea, but to actually see your idea and then your opponent's idea and basically how that, you know, makes your whole idea useless, so you just need to do something else. And I think this is incredibly important because you will probably lose just as many games from missing your opponent's tactical ideas as you will from, you know, finding your own winning ones, which, you know, are brilliant and whatnot. And it just is, again, so important because as humans, we have this bias, I think. I don't know why, but just to think more about our own ideas, right? Like, I guess we're very selfish just by nature. And these exercises really just seek to reverse that bad habit, which I think, again, is incredibly important. To give you guys a little bit of a taste, though, of what these positions might look like, since I have a feeling a lot of you watching this video have never done these sorts of positions before, I'm going to show 3 quick examples that I've given to my own students before. And yeah, anyways, let's go ahead and see how you do. Okay, so this is the first position. It's black to move here. And yeah, just take a think, see how you would respond. But anyways, yeah, after you finish pausing, we can talk about this. But yeah, basically the point here is, okay, obviously Black's knight is under attack. How do we defend it? If you're like a lot of other players, the first move you'll consider, and I think to be honest the first one that you should try to consider, is rook e6, because not only are you defending the knight here, I mean also for context, you're 2 pawns up, right? So if you were to trade like these pieces off, these rooks off, that should be good. But if you've looked one step further, you would hopefully see that rook e6 is in fact a blunder, because after takes, there's bishop h7 check, your king has to take, and then you lose the rook. And that final position, maybe you could argue, like, still material is technically equal, but I think it's losing. Your king is just out of action. Rook f7 is going to be coming, and probably like queening up, or maybe like rook e8, one of those pawns somehow. I don't really think this is a good position to end up in. So instead what you should do, fairly straightforward, either you go rook e8 or rook c7, defend the knight. You just need to make sure here that you're avoiding this rook e6 move, which from the game that I took this from was actually played. Okay, here's another position. This one is white to move. And yeah, again, just take another think, and then we'll come back and discuss this position. So what was played in this game, and is ultimately a mistake, is this move to go f3, you attack the knight, and you might be expecting the knight to move somewhere, and then you take a free pawn, and life is pretty good. The issue that maybe you realize, maybe you didn't, but if you haven't noticed what the issue is with f3, I'd encourage you to pause the video, think about what it could be, is that black has an in-between move now to go c4, attack the queen. There's only really two squares for the queen, either e2 or d4. If e2, then you get taken. I mean, you could also take here, I guess, and take the queen, but then you're just down in exchange, so that's not too great. Otherwise, you go to d4, but then your queen is trapped. I mean, I guess, again, you can do this thing and be down in exchange, but obviously not really where you want it to be to begin with. So instead of all that, what you should do, starting out, is just go c4 and attack this, and after c6, I think there's more than one move here, but now you can go f3, you don't run to c4, now you take this, and you're basically just a pawn up. But the key thing to really see from the starting position is why f3 does not work. That's what I really am looking for when I give this position to students. Alright, but here's the final position. This one was actually taken from an over-the-board game that was played earlier in the year in this like Australian tournament. I was watching it live out of just interest because I knew a bunch of people playing in the tournament. But yeah, try to have a think at this one, see what you would do, and then we'll again come back and discuss it. But okay, the move that you're probably going to be tempted to play, or hopefully you'll be tempted to play, is rook takes e6. You should at least be considering this as a possibility, because if queen takes e6, bishop d5, that's going to be winning the queen. But the problem with this is, and what actually ended up happening in the game, is after rook takes e6, which yeah was again played, it ran into rook takes f3. A very nice counter attack, and basically now, okay, both rooks are hanging at once, but they took a piece while doing this. If you give a check, the rook can come back. If you take this, then they take your rook. If you try to take their queen, they take your queen, and both rooks are again hanging at the same time, but they're a piece up. So basically nothing works in this position. Black is winning in every single line, and so to begin with, white just should not have played rook takes e6, even though it looks like it wins. They should have played like maybe b4 and try to play c5. I mean, black might on, but also knight e4 would probably be reasonable. There's a variety of moves to play, but what's important here is that, I mean, white also just has a positional advantage with how like scattered black's pawn structure is, so we don't really have to do anything special to be better. We just have to really fight off that temptation to take, or maybe not temptation's a word, but we just have to see it straight up not working, and that there's rook takes f3. But anyways, that's about going to wrap up today's video. So if you want more help with your game with one-on-one coaching, I do have a form for that down in the description below. But for the rest of you, hope you've enjoyed this, and I don't know, comment a tactic a day keeps the doctor away if you're still watching. But anyways, see you guys next time.